First story, once upon a time, in a small village nestled deep in the forest, there was a convent of nuns. The nuns were known for their piety and devotion to God, but there was one nun who stood out from the rest. Her name was Sister Mary, and she was said to possess a dark and mysterious power. Rumors spread throughout the village about Sister Mary's abilities. Some said she could see into the future, while others claimed she could communicate with the dead. But the most terrifying rumor of all was that Sister Mary was possessed by a demon. As time passed, the villagers grew increasingly afraid of Sister Mary. They whispered about her in hushed tones, and children were warned not to go near the convent at night. But despite the fear she instilled in the community, Sister Mary remained at the convent, quietly carrying out her duties. One day, a young man from the village named Thomas decided to visit Sister Mary. He had heard the rumors, but he was curious to see for himself if there was any truth to them. He made his way to the convent, and knocked on the heavy wooden door. After a few moments, the door creaked open, revealing Sister Mary standing in the shadows of the dimly lit hallway. Thomas could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he stepped into the convent. Sister Mary led him to a small room, where they sat down to talk. As they spoke, Thomas noticed that Sister Mary's eyes seemed to glint in the darkness, and her voice had a strange, otherworldly quality to it. Suddenly, Sister Mary's demeanor changed. Her eyes grew wide, and her voice became low and guttural. Thomas felt a cold sweat break out across his skin as he realized that Sister Mary was no longer herself. The demon that possessed her had taken control, and it spoke through her in a voice that sounded like it came from the depths of hell. It taunted Thomas, telling him that he was foolish to come to the convent, and that he would never leave alive. Thomas tried to run, but the demon was too fast. It chased him through the dark, twisting corridors of the convent, its voice echoing off the walls. Thomas could feel its hot breath on his neck, and he knew that he was running out of time. Just when all hope seemed lost, Thomas stumbled upon a small chapel at the heart of the convent. He burst through the doors, and fell to his knees in front of the altar. The demon howled in rage, unable to enter the holy space. Sister Mary's body convulsed as the demon fought to maintain control, but finally, with a deafening scream, it was expelled from her body. Sister Mary collapsed to the floor, exhausted and dazed. Thomas helped her to her feet, and together they fled the convent. As they ran through the forest, Thomas could still hear the demon's laughter echoing in his ears. From that day on, Thomas never forgot the terror he had experienced at the hands of Sister Mary and the demon that possessed her. And although he never returned to the convent, he knew that the memory of that night would haunt him forevermore. Second story. In a small, isolated convent on the outskirts of a rural town, there lived a nun named Sister Mary. She had dedicated her entire life to serving the Lord, and her devotion to her faith was unparalleled. However, as she grew older, it became clear that her health was failing. Her once vibrant spirit was slowly being consumed by an unknown illness, and her fellow sisters could do little to ease her suffering. One night, as the other nuns were resting, Sister Mary awoke to a strange feeling. She felt as though she was being watched, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She tried to ignore the sensation, but it persisted, growing stronger by the minute. Suddenly, she heard a soft whisper coming from the shadows. "Sister Mary," the voice whispered, "do not be afraid." Sister Mary's heart raced as she tried to locate the source of the voice. She knew she was alone in her room, and yet the voice continued to speak. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I am the spirit of a nun who died in this very room many years ago," the voice replied. "I have come to offer you a warning." Sister Mary listened intently as the spirit revealed a dark secret about the convent. She spoke of a powerful evil that had taken root in the walls of the building, and warned that it would soon consume them all. Sister Mary was terrified, but she knew that she had to act. She gathered the other nuns and shared the spirit's warning with them. At first, they were skeptical, dismissing her claims as the ravings of a sick and delusional woman. But as strange things began to happen throughout the convent, they soon realized that Sister Mary's warning was all too real. They began to hear strange noises in the halls at night, footsteps that echoed through the empty corridors, doors that creaked open and shut on their own. Sister Mary's condition worsened, and she became convinced that the evil was coming for her. She spent her days in a state of constant fear, praying for salvation. One night, as the sisters gathered to pray, they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from Sister Mary's room. They rushed to her side, but it was too late. She lay motionless on her bed, her eyes staring blankly into the abyss. As they mourned the loss of their beloved sister, they felt a sudden chill in the air. They knew that the evil had claimed Sister Mary's soul, and that it was only a matter of time before they too would fall victim to its grasp. The nuns banded together, determined to fight off the evil that had taken root in their convent. They prayed day and night, calling upon the Lord to protect them from the darkness that threatened to engulf them. And in the end, their prayers were answered. The evil was banished, and the nuns were able to live out the rest of their days in peace. But the memory of Sister Mary lingered on, haunting the halls of the convent long after her death. Some say that her spirit still roams the halls, warning those who will listen of the danger that lurks within. And so the story of the dying nun lives on, a cautionary tale of the dangers that await those who dare to tread in the realm of the supernatural. Last story: once upon a time, in a small village nestled deep in the woods, there was an old convent. The convent was home to a group of nuns who lived a peaceful and devout life, dedicating themselves to prayer and good works. But there was one nun who was feared by all who knew her. Her name was Sister Agatha, but the villagers called her the Witch Nun. Sister Agatha was rumored to have strange powers and a dark past. No one knew where she came from or how she ended up at the convent. Some whispered that she had been excommunicated from another order, while others believed she had made a deal with the devil. Whatever the truth, Sister Agatha was a figure of fear and suspicion in the village. As time passed, the rumors about Sister Agatha grew more and more alarming. Some said she could curse people with a single glance, while others claimed she could control the weather. A few even whispered that she had the power to raise the dead. The villagers lived in fear of Sister Agatha, but they dared not confront her. It was said that those who crossed her would suffer terrible consequences, and some claimed that she had already punished those who had spoken out against her. One day, a young girl from the village went missing. The villagers searched everywhere, but they could not find her. As night fell, they gathered in the square to discuss what to do next. Suddenly, they heard a sound coming from the direction of the convent. It was a low, mournful chanting, and it seemed to be coming from Sister Agatha's room. The villagers crept closer, their hearts pounding with fear. They peered through the window and saw Sister Agatha standing over a cauldron, muttering strange incantations. In the flickering light of the candles, they could see the outline of a small figure lying on the table next to her. The villagers realized with horror that it was the missing girl. They burst into the room, determined to rescue her. But as they approached, Sister Agatha turned on them with a look of pure hatred. In the chaos that followed, the villagers fought desperately to save the girl. But Sister Agatha was too powerful. She summoned a terrible storm that raged around the convent, tearing down trees and shattering windows. Lightning flashed and thunder shook the ground. The villagers cowered in fear, realizing too late that they had underestimated the witch nun's power. When the storm finally subsided, the villagers stumbled out of the convent, battered and bruised. The missing girl was nowhere to be found, and Sister Agatha had vanished without a trace. From that day on, the villagers lived in even greater fear of the witch nun. They knew that she was out there, somewhere in the woods, waiting to strike again. And they knew that they could never let their guard down, for the witch nun was always watching, always waiting, and always ready to unleash her terrible powers on those who opposed her.